it's a pleasure to be here. Adeoye, thank you so much for the for the kind words. You're not the only person who tells me that they are very shocked that I do the work that I do today. I was that person that while in school who never spoke up in class, but because of my issues with shyness and imposter syndrome and all of that. But in the past couple of years, I have been able to build an organization that started out as a volunteer-driven organization. So when we started out, I mean, we started out as a non-profit, and it was really volunteer-driven. And today, I can say that we've been able to raise a team of about 15 full-time staff in Abuja and Lagos. In Abuja and Edo states, and we have over 200 volunteers and just legal counsel across the country. So I'm hoping that the little insight I would share would be valuable to you. Adeoye knows how much I told her that I really guide my time jealously and then guide the time of the people that are listening to me. So it's very critical for me that I don't just speak to you today, but you leave here with at least something that would help your businesses or your organizations to do better in the coming days. And just to say that even though I run a non-profit, I don't like to even call it a non-profit. I run a social enterprise, Hope Behind Bars Africa. Even though our priority really is not necessarily profit, I think that some of the things that has worked for us would also work for business organizations or startups or SMEs that are here today or that are listening to me today. So thank you for your time. I'm just going to start off by doing a presentation for about 20 minutes. And I think Adeoye has some questions for me. It's possible that some of the questions I would probably touch on it during the presentation or even share scenarios relating to the questions you would ask. And then afterwards, we'll take questions from everyone if you have any question, and then we'll do a recap. I'm trusting and hoping that we would be done by 2 p.m. I mean, I like to respect people that eventually, irrespective of what it is that we do, we carry learnings from whatever it is we put our hands into leadership. So my understanding of this session is I'm talking to leaders, even though we can't go over the room to hear what each and every person is doing. But my understanding is if I am going to be speaking about inspiring teams to align with your mission, then I'm talking to leaders, people who are looking to run a startup, an SME, a non-profit, a social enterprise, whatever it is. And at some point, you're going to be working with teams. So teams here might not necessarily be full-time teams or paid teams. Teams here can be volunteers. They can be part-time teams. They can even be teams working across different quarters, hybrid teams, teams that meet in person and all of that. So next slide, just an overview. I want to just share like 7 things that has worked for me and I know has worked for a lot of leaders in building a very, very strong team. Next slide. Next slide. Yes, so the picture that we saw before now was a picture of 3 bricklayers, right? They were at the construction site, and then somebody asked them, what are you doing? Or what is it you're doing? I mean, you can see them from the picture that was shared earlier, obviously laying bricks. The first person said, I'm laying bricks, which is exactly what we could see them doing. The second person said, I'm building a wall. And the last person said, I'm building a cathedral that stands for centuries. Now, I mean, as I said earlier, we're very conscious of time. The initial plan was to ask you guys what is going on here. Now, this is one question and different perspectives, right? It's very easy for people to see the work that they do as a task. It's very easy for people to see the work that they do as just paying bills. It's also very easy for people to see the work they do as routine. But it would take a leader, or it would take someone who understands the nature of teams or the nature of building strong teams to help them see beyond the routine task, beyond what everyone else is saying, to see something that is bigger than them. Now, if you are here today, I presume most of us are in Nigeria, and you have decided to build something, build a startup, build a non-profit, a social enterprise, whatever it is, then it means that you're a dreamer. Because just the sheer sense of being in Nigeria, we know what the challenges are, right? And so if at this time you decide that, oh no, in spite of all the challenges happening in the country, I have something that I really believe in, that I want to do. So I would want to build a business or an enterprise or a social enterprise, whatever it is, then it means that you're a dreamer. It means that you're a builder. And it's important that if you are going to build, you can't build alone. That's the first thing. If you are going to build, you can't build alone. You need people to build with you. Gone were the days where, I mean, in recent times, you hear people talk a lot about generational wealth. You're not going to build generational wealth, or you're not going to do something that is impactful alone. You will need people to go with you, which is why it is important to think through the process of setting up teams, the process of building teams generally. So it takes me to my first question, or to my first point today. I mentioned earlier, I have 7 points. Next slide. So I'm going to be talking about 7 things, and I need to do this in the next 10 to 15 minutes. The first one is, what is your why? Next slide. What is your why, right? Why are you building what you are building? If you want to attract high impact teams, and I'm going to explain what my understanding, or what you understand, what a high impact team is for the purpose of this section. Now, if you want to attract high impact teams, you cannot attract them by building something without having a mission, right? You need to have a mission. And what is your mission? Your mission is what you want to do and how you want to do it, or what you want to build, or that's utopia, that thing that you see in the world that you want to change, and how you want to change it, what you need to do to get you to what you want to see in the world. That is your why. That is your mission. Now, you cannot be talking about building a high impact team or a motivated team if the people who are working with you don't know why you are doing what you want to do. I didn't get to hear everyone, but at least I heard Musa talk about, having a fashion business. Now, I mean, yes, behind the fashion business is profit, but also behind the profit, there should be something, or there is probably something that makes you believe that what you are building, I think you said, I wrote down the name, that makes you see that what you are building is important at this time, at such a time like this. You must have probably seen certain gaps in the fashion industry in Nigeria, or even in Africa, that you believe that the intervention that you are providing is going to help at this time. So the question is, do you know your why? I mean, I believe as leaders, we should have a sense of our why for the businesses of whatever it is we're running. Now, the second thing is, do the people that work with you, do they know your why? And again, understand that I am not talking about full-time staffs alone. I'm talking about even the volunteers. Do they know why what you do is important to you? My organization, Hope Behind Bars Africa, by May, we are going to have clocked 7 years. But the first 3 years of running the organization, we ran fully with volunteers who, I mean, to a very large extent, they were unpaid for the first 1 or 2 years. If you go through our social media platforms, or you go through our digital footprint, you would see that for the past 7 years, we have been consistently sharing our work. Who was putting out the communication post? Who was putting out the graphics? Who was doing all those things at the initial stage? Interestingly, I did, initially, I think the first year or two I did. And then eventually we got volunteers, communication volunteers, who were willing to do this thing for free. Why? Because they understood the mission. They understood that the work we were doing, it wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about fulfilling my personal ambition. I really had something that I believe in about the Nigerian justice system, and I thought I could change it. So for 3 years, we ran fully on a volunteer basis. In fact, as I speak to you, as much as we have a full-time team of 15 persons, we still have volunteers across the country who provide free legal services to people in prison. Yes, we provide them with stipends here and there. But the truth is, what is that thing that you would tell an adult who has a family that would make him leave his paid employment, or that would make him leave other things that would give him money to do this thing voluntarily? It's the why, it's the mission. The second thing, next slide. Now, many times, as leaders, or as people who run enterprises, we often feel the need to instruct. We often feel the need to tell people what to do. But the truth is, if you are going to build a team, and if you're going to build a high impact team, it's important that they feel ownership. It's important that you're not just ordering them about. And if I'm not mistaken, I want to believe I'm talking to young people here. Oftentimes, we look at the way certain people who have gone ahead of us have led us, and we often feel like, oh, this person is not necessarily a leader. This person is a boss. What is that thing that you need to do with your team to ensure that you are not just passing out orders? Now you've made them see the mission. How can you empower them? And empowering them does not necessarily cost you money. Empowering them can be as little as, that where you are today, you might not afford somebody who has a very, very outstanding resume or a CV. So you get someone who is in the university or who just finished university, and you say, okay, you know what, there is work to do, come and learn. As a matter of fact, a large number of the initial staff that Hope Behind Bars Africa onboarded came from a pool of volunteers who mostly were volunteers from school. How much did I have to offer them when they started? Nothing so much. But empowering them was trusting them to say, okay, you know what, you are a volunteer, but you would not necessarily just be a volunteer. You would be handling this thing. And he had to take a lot of learning. He had to take a lot of learning on their part. He had to take a lot of learning on my part. And so that is empowering. And as I speak to you, I think we have at least 2 of our volunteers who started out as volunteers, interns, coming down to the full-time team, who are even not in the country today. They got scholarships by virtue of the work that they provided to Hope Behind Bars Africa, and they are doing amazing things across the country, across the world, right? So it's important that you see yourself, your role in empowering them, in not just passing out orders, but even living out what you want to see them do, right? They need to see you as not just a leader, but as someone who is a part of the work that you're telling them to do. Next slide. The third one is show, don't just tell. I mean, it's not far from what I just said, right? Everyone loves authenticity. We know when we see a leader that is authentic. We know when we see a leader that is not just out for the money, but is extremely passionate about the work. And they would see it, right? So when I think about showing and not just telling, I'm thinking, how good can you be that you would not be ignored? There is a book like that. I've forgotten the name of the author. Be so good they can't ignore you. And when I say be so good they can't ignore you, I'm not just talking about your team. I'm talking about everyone else. I mean, this is not a session where we start talking about raising funds or raising resources for your work. But the truth is, most times when we start off our leadership journeys as people who run startups or SMEs or whatnot, we start in a space where there are already established actors. And when you start, it feels like oh, the place is already saturated, right? But there is a way you can do your work. There is a way you can show up that you are so good and you would not be ignored. I'm going to give you a quick example. There were certain organizations or there were certain persons who I really wanted to work with before starting Hope Behind Bars Africa. In fact, I can remember applying to volunteer at certain organizations and I didn't even get a response. 7 years down the line, I find myself in rooms with these people. I find myself in rooms with these people as a thought leader. They're looking up to me, looking up to my organization to provide data on the work that we do. They're looking up to us to just share thoughts, and I tell myself that initially, I mean, definitely when you enter into a space, you're going to feel that you're going to get that pushback. It feels like the place is already saturated. But this particular point, show and don't just tell, lead by example, setting small wins that happens on the way. Ensure that you celebrate it. Ensure that you keep your team motivated, right? Ensure that as much as possible, your team sees that you acknowledge their efforts, right? This is very, very important, especially if you are doing your work at a very low resource state. I mean, if you start your venture and you have a lot of funding, it's very easy for you to just hire the right people, fire them if they're doing anyhow. But if you are working with a small team, with a team of volunteers, you're working with a team of people who don't particularly have pecuniary advantage over their peers, you need to be able to celebrate small wins. You need to be able to help them see that, oh, I see you. We are not exactly where we want to be yet, but when we get there, everybody is going to be carried along. So that's what this is about. Celebrate small wins and keep the fire burning. Next slide. This is extremely key. I think when I think about this point, I think about being selfish. When we want to hire, or when it gets to the stage where I come in during the hiring process at an organization, I always ask a particular question, which probably other HR people would ask in a different way. And that question is, what is in this for you? I mean, I know you want to earn a living, and it's great to earn a living and all of that, but what is in it for you? Why us, right? Why us? Why this organization? Certain people have the answer, certain people don't have the answer. But for me, that is really critical. That is extremely critical, because I know that if we are able to understand why this person has decided to work with us at this time, we can all meet at a level, right? We can all have a meeting point. I don't view people that come to work with me as people that just come to take their bills and go. So for instance, let me give you another question I often ask. I ask them, in the next 5 years, what do you see yourself? In the next 5 years, You tell me, I see myself out of the country, right? I see myself doing my master somewhere. Now, depending on the role, I can easily tell you that, oh, okay, good. And I'll give you the story of people that have volunteered for the organization or has worked for the organization and today they're out of the country, depending on the role. If it's a role that I know that I'm not looking for someone who is going to stay for as long as possible. But when you are speaking to prospective hires, or even if you already have teams, it's important that beyond the monetary part, you understand what is in it for them, right? That is where you appeal to the emotional part of the people that work with you. So you run an organization that works with people who have cerebral palsy or people who have special needs, and you're having a conversation. The person, ordinarily, the regular job interview would not help you see that this person has a brother who has special needs, right? But asking the right questions will take you to that level. So you know that, okay, this person is really here to stay. This person is not just here just to pay bills. There's something this person wants beyond this. I am appealing to the emotional or the intrinsic part of this person. And then you know how to work with that person to ensure that, your needs are being met. Very closely to this is also when you have constant conversations with your team to say, you've been here for 6 months. Do you think the reason why you came here is being met? You've been here for 6 months. Do you think beyond, whatever you get, you're able to pay your bills and all of that? Do you think that are you being valuable? Do you feel like you're building a career out of this work that you do with me? So that's something else that we need to really bear in mind. The next point is building a culture of building a culture of shared purpose and not just work. Now, here for me, the most critical part of this conversation is the culture. What kind of culture are you building? Now, culture is quite homogeneous. There are so many things that comes to mind when we talk about culture. Is it a culture of excellence? Is it a culture of professionalism? Is it a culture of respect? You don't wait until you have a full-time team to build this culture. I can remember as far back as when we were working with just volunteers, everybody had a job description. If you are going to work with me, even though I'm not going to be paying you, or even if I'm not able to afford to pay you what you deserve, everybody has a job description. Everybody has their key performance indicators. So what is that culture that you want? What is that culture that you see? What is that culture that would help you achieve your mission? Culture of excellence. You need to start building it. You need to demand it, as a matter of fact. But beyond demanding it, you need to be that culture. So if you're demanding excellence, they need to see you as excellent. If you're demanding growth, they need to see you as growth. My assistant is on this platform, and she knows that one of the things I always tell my team is, you don't never be at the same point you were yesterday today. And the only way to do that is to make sure that you are always getting into opportunities. You're always empowering yourself, right? And so I tell my team this every other day. Whether they run with it, whether they don't run with it, they can see me as their leader jumping into opportunities. I mean, I'm not just talking about jumping into opportunities because you want to be everywhere, but good opportunities, right? Opportunities that would help you even as a leader to grow. So you need to embody whatever culture it is you are trying to see in your team. The next slide. So the final one is fire fast and hire slowly. Now I learned this last year. Excuse me. I learned this last year. And this also talks about adaptability as a leader, or what we call adaptive leadership. Now, I've done my work for about 7 years, and in the past 7 years, there has been different levels for us. There has been different spaces or different levels of my leadership, or of my team building, of my building a team. There was a point where I worked solely with volunteers. There was a point where we began to hire, full-time team from the volunteers. And then there is this point where we have so much people on the team, and it looks like there's just so much to handle. There's just so much to do. And for me as a leader, I had to learn adaptive leadership last year. That yes, it looks as though the first 6 things I mentioned, is you carrying everybody along, is you trying to be that transformative leader. Of course, it's important that you understand your leadership style and work with your leadership style. But most of all I've shared is that transformative leader, that leader that carries everyone along, that is not autocratic. Now, in this particular point is where you, to some extent, push back on being that transformative leader, and you wear the horn or you wear the garb of a dictator. And when I say dictator and authoritarian, I say that very carefully. You don't want to bring somebody into your team that you are trying to manage, and at the end of the day, the person messes things up for you. I found myself in that position. I had a particular person on my team doing a technical work who cost me so much money. And every time I think of the situation, I know that from the first month, the second month, the third month, I already knew that something was off, because I hire people, and from the first month, I know that I made a good choice, right? But with this person, I knew that it was a mistake, but I just kept managing and managing until it got to a point where she cost us, a lot of money. And when I had conversation with some of my friends in this space, one of the things that came up was you need to learn how to fire fast and hire slowly, or hire slowly and fire fast. Especially now we're talking about paid employees. Once you see that this person just has something that does not align with the mission, this person is coming in to break the team spirit, this person for some reason doesn't even want to learn excellence or learn competence, this person needs to go. So it's very, very important, because if you leave people like that, the problem with leaving people like that is you are rewarding bad behavior, and other people can learn from that, right? So that's my presentation. I would hand over to Aduware now. I know there are a couple of questions. I need to come back to finish my slides. I need
Okay.
like 5 minutes to come back to finish my slides. So
Okay.
yes, thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you so much, Funke. Thank you so much. For those of you that joined in late, I know one of the key things that she talked about is being so good that they can't ignore you, and that speaks to excellence, and knowing what you do. And then she also talked about celebrating small wins. I think for me, that one is also very key, because it's very important that when you track, where you are, you see your growth, celebrate it, celebrate it. Thank you so much. Please, let's just use our emojis and thank Funke. Thank you so much, Funke. I have a few questions that I'll be asking you right now. Of course, because of time, we would not be going into everything. But I would just like to ask, you were talking about the fact that whenever you hire somebody in the first month, you usually have an idea that, this was a good choice. But I know that one of the challenges that a lot of, small business owners have is actually getting that right person on your team. And you know how difficult it is when you are trying to do the onboarding session or trying to put the person through, the structures, the system, and then you just find out that this was not the right, this was just a wrong miss. It was the wrong hit. It was a miss. And you are thinking, how do I start this process all over again? So my question is this: how do you identify, first of all, starting from how do you identify and attract the right team members, into your team that can share your mission as a leader?
Thank you very much, Aduare, for the question. So I'm going to respond to this question just using what has worked for me, right? This might not necessarily work in a very big organization, but I want to believe that for most of us here, we're SMEs and we're looking to just hire people into small teams and the likes. Now, what has worked for me, to be candid, is ensuring that, and I'm going to borrow the word that you used when you said, how do we attract? I think the word is actually attracting. Now, my digital footprints are out there, right? So my question is, for everyone listening to me, do you have digital footprints of your work, right? Again, sorry, Nosa, I have to use you. You were the only one who shared about your work. So Nosa has this fantastic fashion business that she's working on, and just looking at Nusa's digital footprint, I can see that this is someone that exudes so much excellence when it comes to the work that she does. I can see some of the work that she does online. And do you know that at least 70% of the people who have worked with me are people who just saw my work out there, and just in a way just want to be part of the vision, right? I mean, most of them had to go through the process of applying and going through the HR procedures and all of that. But you would always note those kind of people during interviews, right? You would always know. Let me give a quick example. My executive assistant is currently here, and I have to say this because she's leaving me this month already. So let me quickly say this. When we're going to
Oh,
hire the position of her position, we had a lot of people coming for interview, and we had people who were coming in for the role of executive assistant who knew nothing about me. And then come in this person who I've never met before, I've never seen before, and she literally told me like my life story. I was scared. I mean, not only did she have an excellent CV, she had a very amazing resume. She had everything was perfect, but she was very prepared for the role. And then, a host of other things that also came out of that interview, right? Why? Because she had seen my digital footprint, she had studied my work, and she really wanted the job. And of course, she coming to work with me, I have no single regret at all. I mean, I've had people, like I said, that I had to fire, right? But to a very large extent, just to respond to your question, is you have to attract what you want. And it doesn't, you don't necessarily have to be an NGO to do this, right? You can be a business consultant, you can be a lawyer. What is it? What is your digital footprint? In this day and age, I'm hoping that nobody will tell me I don't have digital footprint or I'm not really into social media. No, please don't be that person. Especially when you don't have money to hire people who already have like the right skills or the right resume. I think the first place to go is ensuring that you present yourself as a brand that excellent people would want to work with. Yeah, that's my response.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, in other words, it starts with you. How you show up is how people would want to, as in, associate with you. Very good. Thank you so much. Another question I will just ask is about challenges. Maybe just one example. I think, okay, maybe you've even shared a few examples, but maybe if you could just go in depth in a specific challenge that you faced with any of your staff and how you were able to deal with that. Maybe that would speak to, anyone here who may be facing such challenge as well.
Let me talk about the challenge of let me talk about the challenge of not being able to pay people what you think that with the socioeconomic issues in the country they deserve, right?
Hmm.
And this is very critical for me because as much as I believe that people should come join you in your mission, they should help you build your dreams, whatever they might be. I believe that people should be paid well. They should be paid enough that they go back and they are doing the work and they're happy. Now, I've had circumstances while running my organization where, truly speaking, we didn't have the resources to pay people well, right? And what did we do? Now, I'm saying this because I remember that a couple of days ago, I saw something in the news of a particular person who was running a fashion business and she wasn't paying her staff. And this staff kept coming for like months on months. And for some reason, there was just this toxicity around working with her. And, I just told myself that what will it take you to bring this person along to your vision? Now, so what has worked for me is there is an amount I'm able to afford, right? Now, you need to have sincere conversations with your team. You cannot be that boss that people are working for you, they're bringing so much value to your organization or to your company, but for some reason, yeah, things like finance is shrouded in secrecy. Now, I'm not saying they need to know everything, but I'm saying like the basics. You are paying someone this amount and you truly know that with this person's skill, with this person's time, with the socioeconomic realities of the country, this person should be paid more, but you cannot afford more. Have a conversation with the person. One of such conversations I've had with my team members is to say, guys, we run a non-profit, we run based on grants, you know how much we have. Ideally, this is what we should be earning at this time, or you should be earning at this time, but we can't pay you that. So what we will do is to and in the books says exactly what we should be paying you. The moment we have funding that would unrestricted funds, we would pay you the backlog. Now there is a couch to that I also go ahead to say, if you bring in money, you are guaranteed this is going to happen faster. Every time I've had to use that, I find in that money comes in faster because now they are not just coming to just any salary. They know that, okay, for every money that comes in, for every grant that come in, there's a possibility that their benefits and salaries will be affected positively, right? And of course, please don't have such a conversation if you're not going to be a person of your words, because that's where distrust will come in. I remember I was speaking to a potential hire one time and I told him the same thing, and he said, but we know you boss, you bosses, that when push comes to shove, you will say you didn't say it. And I said, I will get the HR to do a memo that I said this, right? And I can tell you that there are a couple of people who have worked with me for 4 years, 5 years, that just this thing is what I know has been a major factor in helping them stay, because they know. And I think that goes to one of the points I mentioned earlier. I'm not sure which of the points when I talked about building a shared culture. Yes, so they understand that they are part of it. It's not just your dream, right? They are part of it. They have a stake in what you are building. So yeah, that would be my response to that question.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I let me just, I don't want to hammer that, but I think that point you raised, especially for SMEs, NGOs, is really key. Paying what the person is actually worth, is a challenge for a lot of us. Now, another question is issues around collaborations and strategic partnerships. Considering the fact that we run on limited resources, there is need for collaborations, partnerships in ensuring that we can maximize our impact. So, what are the best strategies to approach collaborations and partnerships?
I mean, with and I mean, with the current socio-economic and political state of not just Nigeria but the world today, we can't even do without partnerships and collaborations. For the people in the non-profit space, you would know that Trump coming into administration has
Has
affected a whole lot of
affected,
things for us.
yes,
And
yes.
even before Trump came into power, there's just been a shrinking of the donor space, right? A shrinking of aid and support and whatnot. So one thing I know that donors are particularly interested in is collaboration and partnership, and not just for the non-profit, even for companies as well. There's recently there's been an issue with investors or venture firms investing in Nigerian or African startups generally due to trust issues and all of that. And so one thing you don't want to joke with is collaboration and partnership, because it would go a very long way. Now for us, initially before we began to get some of our funds, we were very big on partnership, and we are still very big on partnership. Partnerships helps you to stand on the shoulder of giants, right? You know that this particular organization has visibility, not as much as you. Now, working with them helps to bridge that gap. So when you reach out, work with such kind of organizations, what you get is the visibility they would usually get, and the people that would usually support them can begin to see you. So that's one of the benefits of collaboration. So for me, it's just ensuring that the organization in question has similar values as or similar objectives as well, and more importantly, we are able to lay down maybe not rules and regulations, terms of reference of how the partnership is going to run. It's extremely important that you have that. Again, similar values, similar objectives. I mean, I would not go and partner with somebody that is doing something totally different from what I'm doing, or that I know I don't particularly trust the excellence or the professionalism of their work. And then finally, ensuring that whatever it is you agree on, it is laid down in writing through like a terms of reference. Yeah, that's my response.
Thank you so much. I'll just be giving the floor of opening it up for questions. So if you have questions, please do ask. If you want to ask, I'll just give one person an opportunity to ask. And then for the others, please feel free to type it in the chat. So is there anyone that has questions that we want to ask Funke, perhaps just pertaining to your own situation specifically? You want her to, if they say pick her brain, which I don't really like that word anyway, but you want to just hear what she has to say on that issue. Is there anyone in the room that may have a question for Funke? I'm not seeing any hand. I don't know if you are seeing. I can't see any hand, and I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Okay, so Funke, I think I'll just ask you one more question before we allow you to round off because of time. The last question I will ask is positioning for global relevance and impact. So we are also very particular in Jedi Center about being globally relevant, and we know that you are our forerunner. You have gone way, way, way ahead as far as that is concerned. So, are there any tips that you could share with us? What worked? What was that turning point? What was it that you did differently? Or was it just luck? Or what? Can you share with us?
Definitely not luck.
Okay.
Definitely, it's definitely not luck. So let me just give a little context for a few people that might not know me very well. There are a couple of opportunities that just leading Hope Behind Bars Africa in the past 7 years I've been able to get into. I am a Mandela Washington Fellow. Mandela Washington Fellowship is a fully funded program sponsored by the US government, where you go to the US and spend 6 weeks alongside other African leaders. I'm currently studying at the University of Oxford as a Commonwealth Scholar, fully funded scholarship. I am an Acumen Fellow. Acumen is a global name that does a lot of work for social enterprises. I'm an Ashoka fellow. Now, Ashoka, it's interesting, and just to answer your question, Aduari, that it's not luck. 8 years ago, I was at an event and somebody was talking about this fellowship where the process to getting is extremely intensive. You must have done a lot of work. You must have spent 15 years. I think at the time he had spent about 15 years doing the work. Your interviewers will come from different parts of the world, blah, blah, blah. He just talked about Ashoka. 8 years ago, I had not even started my organization. But 7 years later, last year, I became an Ashoka fellow. Just to let you know, Ashoka pays you
To be a
if you
fellow.
run a non-profit, it pays you stipends to focus on your work, and the stipend is not in naira. So just do with that information whatever you want. And a couple of other fellowships and all of that. It's not luck. I think for me, the turning point is understanding that I got into this space a little bit by happenstance. Now, I have a personal story to the work that I do, which I mean, I would not necessarily share right now because of the time. But if you had asked me 10 years ago if I was going to be leading a non-profit, the answer would have been no. Like I said, before I started my work, I had tried working in organizations that I thought were similar to my passion or were similar to the lived experience I had or my understanding of impact and all of that. I didn't plan to start an organization. But when I started, I realized that there's something we popularly say in law, nemo dat pod non habet. You can't give what you don't have. I realized I didn't have half of the things I needed to give. And the only way to do that, again, like Aduwari said, is collaborations. And one of the ways to get these collaborations is through fellowships, international fellowships, local fellowships. So I actually started at the local level, got into a couple of incubator programs. In fact, one of the incubator programs was the one who, through their stipends, I was able to use to register the organization. Got into a couple of local incubator programs. And then I had to start beginning to look at what I could get outside of even Nigeria, right? And again, I talk about digital footprints a lot because digital footprints helped me. Going to look at people who I thought their lives looked very similar to what I wanted to see, or no, not their lives, their careers looked similar to what I wanted to see. I remember there's a particular international human rights lawyer who I just went to his platform and I saw, oh, University of Oxford, Commonwealth Scholar. And I went to read up and I saw that, oh, this is a fully funded scholarship. It covers everything. Okay, if this person can get in, I'm going to get in, right? So that digital footprint thing, it's not just for you, it
And
also
today
for
you are in.
people
You
who
forgot
would
to
look.
mention that she's actually a student of University of Oxford as well. Let me put that out there.
Yes, right. So it's just looking at the digital footprints of people whose career I respected, whose career resonated with me, and then trying to walk my way to the top or trying to fly my way to the top, whatever. I mean, it's not without its battles. For instance, Mandela Washington Fellowship, I applied 4 times, even though I got in twice, right? And I got in, I withdrew, and then I applied again. Same also for Oxford. I mean, some of you might be extremely brilliant and you would apply once. I applied 3 times, and then I got in. So just to cut to respond adequately to your question, Azuari, is it's not luck. It's a little bit of intentionality. It's a little bit of saying what other people who have gone ahead of you in a similar field have done, and then trying to see how you can not necessarily copy, but follow their footsteps.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I would just be giving you the opportunity to do a bit of wrap up because of our time. I know we have barely about 7 or so minutes left. And then if you have more time, I would want everybody to, if you have questions, please put it in the chat so that we'll try to answer it if we have the time for that. Thank you so much, Funke. Do you want me to continue with the slides?
I think I have two. Yes, I have two
Okay.
more slides. It's
Okay.
just a recap. I mean, yeah, I
Okay.
think they have the slides with Steve Jobs. I mean, a lot of us know Steve Jobs very well. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah. Steve Jobs. I mean, if we don't know Steve Jobs, of course we do. We definitely know the iPhone or the Apple products. And there was something I read, which I just shared here, that one of the things, while he was building the team, there was a rule he had that if a feature is not great within 2 years, don't build it.
Mm,
But if it's something
mm,
if it's something that you would want to use in the next 10 years, go ahead and build it. And everyone who has used an Apple product can agree with me on the durability. You can see this mission being weaved into everything that Apple builds. Now
mm,
that takes us back to the first thing that we talked about. What is your mission? What is your why? this is a very short presentation, so I couldn't go necessarily into the external things and the internal things, right? But if you would get one thing out of this presentation, you would see that most times I am bringing the mirror back to you. Now, you are talking about building a very strong team that aligns with your mission. Yes, it's important, but it's first taking the mirror back to you, looking at yourself as a leader, looking at yourself and saying, how can I attract the people that will take this mission to the next level? How can I speak to the people? What are the things I need to say to them that would help them see this mission? Right? It was just this conversation or whatever it is that Steve Jobs had with his initial thing. And even though he's dead today, we can still see that being weaved into the kind of products that Apple currently produces. So it's important that your team sees, again, whatever it is they are doing with you as not just a means to pay bills, but as something that they are part of. And guess what? I say this even though I know very well that many members of your team would not be with you forever. They would not be with you for 5 years, right? But for the time in which they are spending with you, how can you maximize their strength? How can you help them to see beyond where they are now? How can you maximize their strength in such a way that they are showing up and they are showing up excellently? It's really by helping them see the why, helping them see that, okay, this is not just about me. This is not just about you. In fact, this is not just about Nigeria. This is about the millions of people we want to impact. This is about how we want to change fashion trends across the world, fashion trends in Africa. That's why, I mean, as a leader, you need to learn how to talk big, but not just talk big. You really just believe in doing big and doing things afraid. So yeah, that's it. Quick recap, my last slide. Just talked about clarifying your why, empower, don't microwave, give people ownership. It's extremely important. Lead by example. Lead by example. And I mean, that goes to things like even building your personal brand. How do you show up as a leader? How do you show up as someone that wants people who are excellent people to be attracted to the work that you do? Find out what their self-interest is. Every human is selfish. There's always something in me. There is always something extra that we want, right? Find out what that thing is. Many times you think of being selfish as a bad thing, but there's a way you can just tap into that self-interest of your team members, take from it and then use it to get your work done, right? And then finally, commit to excellence. Like, excellence is a journey, it's not a destination. So whatever it is you are today, ensure that you are a better version of what you as a leader is today, so that even when you're talking to your team, they know that the person that led us in 2023 is not the person leading us in 2024. This person has grown, because if you are not growing as a leader, you don't expect your team to grow. So yeah, that's all from my end.
Amazing.
Yes, that's all from my
Amazing.
end. My last quote: the needle is not going to move by what? By itself. You
So,
must be intentional in shifting or in moving the needle. So thank you
wow.
so much.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
I truly appreciate. I hope I've been able to give some value to everyone who's listening to me. I wish I could see your faces, but I understand that the cameras have to be off. You can follow me on LinkedIn. My name on LinkedIn is Funke Adeoye. You will see some of the work that I do there. Thank you once again, Adoari, for inviting me. I
Thank you.
deeply appreciate the
Thank
honor.
you so much. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation. Thank you so much, Funke. You don't know how much I am grateful. Please, let's see our emojis, please. Let's just say thank you, Funke. Thank you so much, Funke. Personally, I've learned so much. I've learned a lot, and I know that a lot of us here too have done so more than just, Funke speaking about it. I want us to also talk about these testimonials. So what I want us to do right now is that, in the course of this whole session, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be tracking, your wins and how you've been able to apply all of these things that we are learning in your own work, in your own life. So we'll be sending out over the months, we'll be sending you emails that will just show how much you can track. So you can share testimonials based on what you have learned and how that is, helping you in your business, in your NGO, so we can just see and understand that, yes, there's actually impact, in these things that we do. I hope that's okay with everybody on the call. So by the time you get emails from us, just trying to see maybe in about 2 weeks, can you show us what you have learned, how that has impacted you? Please be very open to feel it. Okay. We just want to be able to track what we are doing and to show that this is actually working and it's having an impact in your organization, either as a small business owner or you run an NGO, or in fact, if you have a global idea, a business idea you've not started, but you're already using these things to help you start, please let us know about that. I hope that works. Thank you so much again. Our time is almost up. It's actually up in 1 minute. So I'll just be saying thank you. Next month again we'll do this. So see you guys next month and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye. Bye. Thank you. Thank you, Funke. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you.